Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kristen Weardon Show. I am so happy you could be here with us today for another episode because I have a guest who has been on camera, has done all of these great things, and has a fabulous story that I so want to share with you. Today we have Ray Higdon. Ray, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I've known you for a little while, I think 15 years?
Probably right around that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, you have come so far from when I first met you. Your story is incredible. We had your wife on.
Ah.
She was...
I don't like going after her.
I'm
good.
so sorry.
She's good.
I had her and I was like, I wonder if we can get Ray too. So I know you're very busy, so I really appreciate you being on the show.
Of course.
So when I met you, you had just come out of the foreclosures. And I know you've talked about the story quite a bit.
Sure.
As your history and as your story. And you became a top income earner in network marketing and then went into coaching. What would you say was your mindset during all of those transitions, especially in the beginning?
Yeah. So, I went through a period. So I got into real estate in 2004 and, was doing well, flipping houses, buying rental properties and things like that, like everyone was doing.
Right.
And it was, it went well. When that went sideways and I lose everything, I go through a divorce, I go into foreclosure. I was definitely shell-shocked for probably a year where I was just felt very depressed and everything. And the kind of weird turning point for me that I didn't expect would do this was actually has to do with my dad. And I don't know if you've heard this.
I heard a little bit of the story, yeah.
But yeah, it was, I go to this 3-day event and I'm hoping hopefully I can make some money, it'll teach me something. And I find that I have repair relationship with my dad on a to-do list with no priority. And I hadn't talked to him in 13 years and I had every reason not to. And so when I created the relationship with him and forgave him and we made up, all of a sudden I had a very different mindset. So I went from, just depressed, I'm a loser. I actually, for probably a year, I avoided mirrors because I hated myself so much.
Wow.
That's where I was. And after that, with my dad, I just came back and I was just like, let's go. And so I just got very focused and became the #1 income earner of a network marketing company. Started all these different companies started wanting to hire me because I was, I was building on social media before most people were in 2009, 2010. And so it was just a constant, what can I achieve? What can I make happen? And that kind of mindset went, for quite a while. Probably, I would argue probably up to 2019.
Wow. I just remember back to probably 2009, 2010, when you were really doing a lot of social media. I know earlier we were talking and I said, I remember when you made the commitment to do a video every day. And I think then it was just Facebook.
Yeah.
And every day, Ray's on there. Every day, Ray is on there. And I was always marveled at the commitment, even though you were still growing at that point. I mean, you were successful, but still growing more.
Sure.
And the mindset that takes, because I know I have a coaching section that I do.
Sure.
And I did 30 days to a relationship foundation. And I had to go on there every day and drop a nugget of wisdom.
Yeah.
And some days you're like, oh, wait, I have to go do that.
Yeah.
Because I made that commitment.
What am I going to talk about? Yeah.
And what am I going to talk about? Right. And I mapped it out, but still, all of a sudden, you get caught up in the day.
Sure.
And then, you were growing your business. You were doing network marketing. You were growing your coaching at the time. And you're like, oh, hold on. I got to stop what I'm doing and go outside and do a video.
Yeah.
That takes some dedication, fortitude, all of that.
Yeah. It's, I kind of, the things that become a priority for you, you figure out that you do those things and the rest of life fits around those things. And I've always had something, something, and for me it was videos for many, many years and still is, that these things are going to get done. The rest of life is going to happen, but these things are going to get done. And so it's just a mindset.
See, that's a great tip though for people.
Yeah.
You just said, life will fit around that
Yes.
priority.
Yeah.
I don't think people look at life that way when they're trying to grow a business.
Yeah.
That make the priority because the kids are still going to get fed.
Sure.
Somehow the laundry is going to get done.
Yeah.
I talk about that a lot with the moms that I have come in, but as a dad who works at home,
Yeah.
the kids are there.
Yeah.
The noise is there.
Yes.
And you still have to get it done.
Yes. And you look at leveraged action, like me doing a video every day, I just knew, right? This is going to work. Like eventually this is going to work. I don't know how long, 2 years, 6 months, I don't know. I knew it would work, but all the other stuff wasn't like leveraged action. If I go and make a sale, that's not a leveraged action. But if I make that video, it sits out there forever and people can see it.
Yeah, I did find it when I did a little searching on you. Not that I've ever really Googled you before, but just for some extra questions and content. And as I'm looking, I'm like, oh my gosh, a video actually did pop up from way back.
I'm sure.
And in content, it lives. It lives on. So you're right, it is very leveraged. So back in the network marketing days, there's something that always kind of stood out to me because network marketing can be so polarizing.
Sure.
But you took it, and you were probably one of the first people that I know of coming from knowing network marketers since I was a kid.
Sure.
Amway days and Shackley days and all those things. You made it positive. You really, you had a way of doing it. So what would you say some of the common misconceptions are about network marketing?
Yeah.
That kind of make people go, ooh.
Sure. I mean, because it's so low risk, low overhead, anyone can do it. And a lot of people come in, they're not trained, and so they hype or they overpromise or they lie. And none of that's needed. And I also, my mission was, I'm just going to see who's open. Who's open? I wasn't trying to close everybody. And so if I talk to someone and they're negative, it's like, cool, no problem, and just move on. It's just not a big deal. And I think a lot of people, because network marketers over the years have been slimy, shady, they sneak into your group and now they're prospecting or whatever, and you just don't have to be that way. Just be a professional, because the model is brilliant. People would ask me like, well, how much you make your first month? And I'd say, you know what, I don't know. Because there are people I recruited my first month that paid me for the next 10 years. And, so like that's a unique situation, that's not normal. And so, just being a professional and knowing that you don't have to get everybody, you don't have to convince everyone. If someone's against it already, just move on. And, I don't know, you probably didn't bring up this question, but I had a girl on my team, she joined the team when she was 21 years old. She goes home to her parents, and they're like, this is stupid. What are you doing? Brothers made fun of her. Mom and dad made fun of her. Well, when she hit $10,000 a month, the two brothers joined, the mother joined, the dad built a spreadsheet, and that was my wife.
Okay,
at 21, she was at $10,000 a month, and all of a sudden, everyone agreed with her. And so, it's a powerful industry, but a lot of people misrepresent it.
Jessica did share that story with us.
Okay.
And when you were telling me the story, I was like, oh, wow, you had another one? No, and that's one of the things about network marketing, too, that it's a business. If you go into it with the mindset that not everybody wants to walk in your store and buy that dress.
That's right.
It's the same thing. I just think people come in a little delusional, maybe sometimes by the person who recruited them.
Yes.
And if you just look at it, it's a business. I have to get customers. I have to get people to want my product. If they want it, great. If they don't, then somebody else will walk in the door tomorrow.
Yes. Amen.
So that's one thing I noticed about network marketing from my previous experiences to learning more about it.
Yes.
So with your success, you have shared the stage with some amazing people, some really big names. I was looking at your bios and all the press that's been put out about you. Who would you say was the most impactful that you've met when you've been on stage with them, and that you were like, wow, I got to meet this person, but then they also had an impact on how you do life? Yeah.
Because there's a lot of speakers you share the stage with that you don't really spend a lot of personal time with. Tony Robbins, I've had a few very short conversations with him, not much. Richard Branson, no conversation, but I shared the stage with him. I would say, I'd have to think about it. I don't think there's even a question. John Maxwell. John Maxwell is as advertised. And what's interesting is I saw John Maxwell speak at like 3 or 4 events, and he had, no offense, John, but he had, kind of the same speech at all 3 or 4 of these things. And it was a great speech. It was an awesome speech about chopping down a tree or something. And it was great, but I'd heard it 3 or 4 times. So you kind of wonder, like, okay, what's the depth of someone? He's better off stage than on, and he's really good on stage. And so him and I had him as my keynote speaker last year at our Faith Over Fear event, and we did a mentorship program for, where I brought him into our clients. He's awesome. And so, like, any chance you get to work with him or, learn from him, he's fantastic.
Oh, that's good to know. You also did did you do some other things with him besides having, I thought I read somewhere on a bio or something that there was something else you did with him besides having him come into your event.
Yeah, we had him, we called it the Higdon Maxwell Mentorship Program.
That's
so him and I, we took our clients, there's about 50 of them, and so he would pop in, specific to them every other month, and it was just great. I mean, he's a guy that when he talks, you got to take notes because it's so good. But he's awesome off stage too, and he's just a great guy.
Well, that's good to know for everybody out there who wonders.
Yes,
you know,
there are some not so great off stage. I won't say their names, but
well, I think that happens in life.
Yeah,
you have people who are great presenters,
yeah.
but then off stage, like they have a persona.
Yeah.
And then off stage, their persona might be a little bit different.
Right.
And some people I know some people that are on stage that light up, but off stage they're actually kind of shy and reserved.
Yeah.
And they don't have a lot of exterior conversations unless it's with their team or with their group, and then they go back out and they give a present, and that's just the way they are.
Yeah.
I've had that experience with a few people where I was like, oh, you're a little bit different than I expected.
Yeah. Like introverted, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. But they're great at presenting their product.
Yes.
Which, hey, kudos to them.
Yeah.
Because some people can't present their product.
Yeah, it's a great example. It gives inspiration, though.
For sure.
Yeah.
Everybody. I always say try it.
Yeah.
Because I know I used to be afraid to talk on stage, and I took actually one class with somebody who was a pageant person who was helping me work on my presentations before I was Miss USA, and they gave me the example of 80% of the people are rooting for you. I was like, really? And so when I gave my first big speech, which was 500 people, I kept just remembering 80% of the people are rooting for you. The other 20% are in their own heads thinking about their laundry or they have a problem at home.
Yeah.
And that really helped me kind of cross over that hurdle.
Yeah.
Because, right, when you think about when you're on stage and there's those few people over there, you're like, are you not paying attention?
Yes. I always seem to notice them.
Well, you're up there.
They don't slow me, but I notice them.
You can see everything.
Yeah.
And so when I see that, I just go, oh, something might have happened at home. I'm going to worry about the people that are listening.
Totally.
So you have Home Business Profits podcast.
Yeah.
It has reached a milestone.
Yeah.
How many downloads?
I don't know what it is now. The last time we checked, I think this was a couple years ago, it was over 10 million.
Wow. And that's all on network marketing or coaching or...
Okay, so...
Tell me how this evolved.
I'm going to be honest here. So I start doing the podcast probably back in 2014 or something like that. And I just hate it. I don't like this. This sucks. And so I like navigate through to just delete it. And it had 76,000 downloads that month. And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, apparently they like it. And so I am not the guy to model for podcasts. Like model this, okay, model what she's doing because this is smarter. Basically my team takes recordings of what I do and uploads it there.
Okay.
And so sometimes I'm talking about business, cash flow, sales, faith, And so like these are just recordings that are being repurposed on there. And so people like it, but it's not, this is the smarter way to do it.
Well, they like your content.
They like the content.
It comes down to the content. You're giving them something that they need.
Yes.
I know I came back from, International Women's Day. I did a speech at a conference.
Cool.
Yeah, it was great. I was like, oh, you guys want me to talk? That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I went and I did that. But then you get calls afterwards. People want help. I offer everybody free 30 minutes call with me.
Wow.
And one of them was in network marketing. And I said, hold on, I'm not your girl. I got a guy for you.
Yeah.
Because even if you just follow all of his free content, go on YouTube, find him, go on the podcast, find him, just follow all of his free content, you will get so much knowledge that once you build up, if you're ready for that, you can just hire him as a coach or hire some of his team as a coach. And she came back to me and said, I didn't realize there was so much free content for me to learn about how to learn about my business.
Nice.
Because she really didn't have, I guess, much of an upline or anything like that. So people find your content and they just I think they go back. They just go back. Wait, I can't figure this out. Let me see if Ray knows.
Yeah. We get a lot out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know. I said this when you got here. You have so much content.
Yeah.
You are like constantly creating content.
Yeah.
I don't know how you find the time.
It's a major part of my time, yes.
Yes. Well, we were talking when I've had other people on the podcast, especially that have families. It's not about work-life balance. It's about management.
Yeah.
We all there's that thing out there that balance, and I'm like, okay, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
You can't have it all today.
Yeah.
And you're never going to balance it because there's always going to be something not. The laundry's going to be piling up. Something's going to be out of balance.
Yeah.
But how are you managing? Things?
Are you present when you need to be present? Like we here in the summer, we go North Carolina for six weeks in the mountains. Super nice, 70 degrees. It's awesome. And on those days, I'm not taking 6 weeks off, but I'll typically be done by noon or 1 o'clock, usually. And and so it is like sometimes we're heavy with the family. Sometimes we got to work.
Yeah, it's management.
Yeah.
I really think it's management.
Agree.
You recently have kind of gone more into your faith, in found faith.
Yes.
So you've changed your business model into the faith thing. I say the thing because I know some people, I know that really didn't come out right, did it?
That's okay.
Well, I'm a full transparency.
Yeah.
I went through a lot of religious abuse when I was younger.
Yeah.
So I'm faithful. I believe in God, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I believe in Jesus and, the Easter, Christmas kind of thing, brought up Catholic. I just went through a lot of religious abuse after I left being around a lot of Catholics. I ended up in Florida and was beat over the head with the Bible and all that stuff.
Yeah.
In the school that I went to. And I look and I see, when I saw your business model, I go, all of a sudden you're like, they're doing what? I'm sure you got a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, they're doing faith what, huh? So tell me how that came about.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up to that is, were you worried about it affecting your business? Because you guys really became big.
Yeah. Yeah, good questions. So at the end, 2019 just crushed it. I mean, we just crushing it. We had our biggest event ever. We'd sold 2,200 tickets. And at the end of it, there was a piece of me that was just like, something's missing. Like, am I just going to just keep this hamster wheel thing and just keep growing? Is that what I'm supposed to do? And so 2020 started a very different journey. And I thought, I grew up in an abusive home, so maybe I need to heal. And so I tried a lot of different. Instead of hiring the sales gurus or business gurus or internet marketing gurus, I started hiring self-help people, and I tried a lot of different therapy. I tried hypnosis. I did 2 years of 1 to 3 hours a day of meditation. And all of that stuff helped. I won't say it didn't. It did. It helped. Helped to calm my mind, tame the body, and all that stuff. But there was still something missing, and I didn't know what it was. And so my wife, this was in, I think, September of 2022, she spoke in Nashville at this women's mastermind thing. And she came back and she said, hey, I met someone you should talk to. And I'm like, okay. And so I get on a Zoom with this guy. He lives in Miami. And as soon as I get on the Zoom, he looks at me and goes, I see a big vision for you and God. And I'm like, okay. All right. Is he selling me something? Is he trying to raise money? Because I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't know one verse. I didn't know anything. I remember Googling, after seeing Tim Tebow, I Googled John 3:16. It didn't make sense. I'm like, this is strange. And so I just had no understanding of anything. And so I talk with that guy for like an hour, and none of it makes sense, but it feels true. And it's very strange. It's like a strange feeling of, I don't know what he just said, but something in me, this seems like something I should pursue or something. I don't know what to do. And so the next day, Jess and I go to Seed to Table. Shout out, Seed to Table. And so we go to Seed to Table. It was one of the big networking events. It was a Tuesday, I think. And so we walk upstairs, and I see this guy that I know I've met before. I didn't remember his name. I didn't remember what he did. And he looks at me and he says, "I see a big vision for you and God." And I'm like, whoa, that's weird, right? Like, these guys don't know each other. This is Naples, he's Miami. And he goes, "We need to pray." And so he puts his arms over me. And this is, I'll give him a shout out too, Pastor Anthony. And so Pastor Anthony, who's 6'11" or whatever he is, right? He's 6'4" or 5", and he's praying over me. We're standing up. Everyone else is seated. It's packed. You know how it gets.
Yeah.
It's packed. I don't know what's going on, and I don't even remember what he says. But I start shaking. I start weeping. I start crying, and it feels like it goes on forever. He's just like, whatever he's saying. I don't know what he's saying. And at some point, logic kind of kicks in of, this is kind of embarrassing, because I know a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And so we come out of the, prayer huddle. No one saw a thing, which is impossible. That is supernaturally impossible. Yeah. I mean, I could have swung my arms and hit 5 people. Yeah. No one noticed anything, like cut that guy off, or those guys are weird, like nothing. No one saw anything. And so now I'm really convicted. I'm like, man, what is happening? And so I kind of wrestled with this for probably a week, maybe 2 weeks. I have the original guy come over from Miami. He brings a guy from church, and both my wife and I give our life to Christ. And so the next morning, I wake up and I'm different. Like, I did, 2 years of 1 to 3 hours a day of meditation, right? And so I know my body. And as soon as my feet hit the floor, I'm like, what is it? I'm looking at my hands. I'm looking at the sunrise. I'm different. There's something in me different. I don't know Born Again. I don't know any of the verses or anything. And I just, I feel the just overwhelming urge to pray, and I don't know how to pray. So I get on my knees. I'm just like, God, tell me what to do. I'll be obedient. And I get, go live. Like, that's what I get. I mean, that is a blaring thought in my head. That is not what I wanted to do. I did not want to go live. I didn't want to do any of that. And so I pray on it again, And eventually, after wrestling with it, I go live. And, I went from someone who's never said the word God on stage for 17 years or whatever it is, to sharing my journey and sharing what just happened. That video, it's a Facebook Live. It gets 50,000 views the first day. And probably the weirder thing was, I had over 200 people message me and say, like, it's almost like they collaborated. I've been woken up in the middle of the night to pray for you. And none of them had ever told me that. And so it wasn't like people say, man, you really went with the faith brand, huh? It really wasn't a
people
strategy.
Actually say that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
the faith brand.
Yeah, and so it really was more obedience than anything. However, there's been, a lot of people didn't like it. Right? Some people lost some clients, lost some people. Some people just didn't like it, for sure. And so the whole time I've really just been to my best ability of being obedient, of, Jesus changed my life in every area of my life. And I don't want the business over here, Sunday religion, I just didn't want that. Now, I have been corrected many times in prayer. I've so fallen in love with the Word and so fallen in love with Scripture. I just love it. It just guides my life. But He wants me in the marketplace. And He's told me multiple times, marketplace, dude, you can bring in Scripture, you can bring in prayer, but I want you in the marketplace. So I've gotten that over and over and over. And so I've been doing my best to abide by that.
So combining the faith and the business strategies,
yes.
Do you find that that's, for some people, that would be conflicting?
To me, it's a good question. So to me, it's a lack of study.
Okay.
And so if you study Scripture enough, and I know that, I mean, I've been with Christ for 20 months now, I think, and but the way that God wired me is I'm a relentless dude, and so like I have been in the Word every single day since. I've had Hebrew mentors, Aramaic mentors. I've had multiple, pretty well-known pastors that have mentored me, and so the more you study it, the more you get that that's actually not the case. Solomon talks about a diligent hand will rule, while the lazy are put to forced labor. And you hear that, and you're like, forced labor? Well, there's a lot of people in a job they can't stand.
I was just about to say that makes perfect sense.
A lot of them. And a diligent hand, King Solomon's not talking about physical labor. He's talking about making offers. He's talking about drawing contracts, meeting people. And so the more you study, you realize that God wants to bless the work of your hands. And so go do the work, right? So it's okay. Luke 69 says, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself so that when it is gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. So it's okay to have money. It's okay to be wealthy. Just don't let it have you, which most people do, right? And I did too.
We see that. We see that where we live. We see that in society. We see that on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you. I think that's where people, they veer in the wrong direction, where money controls what they do, rather than do the work and the money will come.
Yeah. Or their identity is tied to money. Like mine was, if I had a bunch of money, I wanted more. If I didn't have money, I was sad. So money was an indicator of how does Ray feel today, and that's no longer my identity. Now that's the identity of most people. They get their identity, safety, security, significance, and status from money. And again, this isn't bashing money. It's okay for you to have money. Lots of biblical people had money. Abraham and Lot had so much money and so much resources and assets and cattle. They had to all right, we can't fit on this land anymore. We got to separate. And so it's okay to have money. Just don't let it have you, because God is meant to be the source, and everything else is just a resource, which is a great resource, but He's the source.
I love that. I really do, because I think people need to hear that.
Yeah, I needed to hear it.
Well, and as you're telling me, I mean, we used to have the big house. I used to have all the things, and I didn't have to think about. I didn't have to think about money.
Sure.
And when that changes.
Yeah.
And your friends, your identity with your friends, friends. Let me put quote those.
Yeah.
This is what it becomes.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, you're not going to the Hamptons this year." It's like, on what?
Yeah,
how?
Yeah.
How is this going to happen?
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm going to stay home like a normal person.
Yeah.
And things like that. And you have to really wrap your head around. This will change, but it doesn't mean it's who you are.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to go through that journey
of
the loss, which was the hardest thing for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it was all of my identity, but my ability, well, money for me brings the ability to do the things that I would like to do. And that doesn't mean the Hamptons. It means when it's the backpack drive, I don't constantly have to beat people up for $200 for a case.
Sure.
I can buy 2 cases to make sure we have them.
Yeah.
And then anything after that people feel like they want to donate, they can.
Yeah.
And that makes me happy.
Yeah.
And the hurricane stuff I did, and now you're like, oh, I have to be really careful. I don't know, can I spend $200 on a box, a case of, or like this, getting people into the studio.
Yeah.
And, studio time and things like that, and editing, costs money, and doing it at this level. And you say, okay, how many people can I have? Those things cross your mind, and then sometimes you have to say, you know what? If it's meant to be, whatever direction it goes, it'll go, or it'll happen.
Yeah.
It'll either lead to something else, or it'll just keep happening somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow there'll be more studio time, there'll be more guests.
Yeah.
Whatever you decide to do. So I think people really need to hear that just because it's changed doesn't mean it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I have faith in that.
Yeah, I mean, because, there are some areas of my life that have just grown so much and been so awesome, and other areas that have been tough. And I've just grown to believe and understand that God allows all situations for our good. And so, literally everything, loss, pain, all these different things are actually growing in us if we allow that. And He loves us so much, He doesn't want us to remain the same. And so we always have free will. We can look at and be upset. And here's how many of us we have this trial, whether it's financial or relationship or whatever, and we're like, oh, I can't wait for this to be over, or I can't wait to be out of this season. But the Bible tells us the joy of the Lord is our strength, okay? And so what we're saying is, once this is over, then I'll be grateful and have joy. But if the joy of the Lord is our strength, we actually need it during the trial. And so the trick is to, like the Bible says, count it all joy when you face trials of different sorts. So like you want to tap into gratitude during the thing, not gratitude for the thing, but gratitude during the thing, because that's actually your strength. And so that's quite the trick of how can you be grateful for all that God has done during a trial and look for, what am I to learn from this? I know that when a trial comes, it's like, okay, Lord, what are we doing about this, and what am I learning from this? Because I know you wouldn't allow this to happen unless there was something here for my benefit. And that's just a very different way to look at things.
That took me a while to grasp that after the hurricane when I lost the house.
Sure.
Because I just rebuilt everything.
Yeah.
You know, I just rebuilt I got not the house that I wanted, you know, but the house that was perfect for the time I was there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then all gone in a day. Everything, all your staging stuff, all your real estate stuff, all the furniture for houses, all your personal stuff. If it couldn't be washed, it was gone. And that took me about 8 months to wrap my head around.
Sure.
I mean, there's a PTSD that I found out later goes along with something like that. But then I finally was like, there has to be a reason. It's a natural disaster, so I had zero control.
Yeah.
I can beat myself up about what I didn't take.
Sure.
But for some reason, it's the first time I didn't take stuff out of the house either. Anytime I lived near the water and we had a house that was near the water, I would take things out. One time I think I took my entire daughter's room out because she was at college. And I didn't want to be responsible for what was important to her.
Yeah.
So I literally loaded up a van and took everything.
Yeah.
This time I only took necessities. My favorite printer I put on a high shelf, like, you know, because it still took cardstock kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, there's a reason I did that. And then there's a reason everything but the car I owned was gone. I still don't know the reason, but it did make me finally pivot into doing this.
And that may be the reason.
I kept saying I wanted to do a podcast. I wanted to do more lives. I wanted to do video. 2 years.
Yeah.
And not once did I do it. Did I have the room set up, my son's podcast room? Absolutely. But I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, maybe that's the reason.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I'm here now. I can't keep going back.
Yeah.
So I think people need to understand that loss is just, it can be traumatic feeling.
Yeah.
But when you have faith that you're right where you're supposed to be, that's the other one that's hard.
Yeah.
And I even did a video on gratitude for my coaching group. And I said, gratitude can be tough when you've lost everything.
Sure.
But you have to be grateful for that moment because you can't get anything else if you're still here.
Right.
You can't go forward if you've been
That's
backwards.
right.
So
That's right.
So thank you for bringing that up. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you just pivoting for a second because I wanted to bring this up earlier was you did a reality show.
Yeah.
So what do you think looking back on the show, and what would you do different now if you were to do it again?
You know, the guys, and I'm grateful for them. They're out of New York, Two Market Media. You know, they helped us put together. They helped Grant Cardone do his show, and we did 2 seasons. And you know, they do a good job of that. They know what gets people excited. So they wanted us, both Jess and I, which I feel like Jess stepped into the role easier. They want us to be super tough, like super like just really tough on people and just really call people out and everything. And that's not, you know, that's not my nature really. And you know, looking back, I think that some people weren't ready for that. Some of the contestants weren't ready for that. And so I would, you know, it's what needs to be said needs to be said. Don't get me wrong, but there's a way to say it. And also just the realization that there have been people that I've coached, you know, for years that just had stuff they just could not get over. And now I realize that some of that was spiritual warfare. And some of that was, you know, if someone has a spirit of offense, you're going to struggle to communicate to that person. You just are, because it's running through a filter. And so I would say I'd be one. I would have been praying about them more, and then praying for them. Right, what's actually going on, and God's just been amazing. And when I pray about someone, I get some things. I get things that I shouldn't know, and that's extremely helpful to my clients and extremely helpful to people that I work with. Didn't have that back then. Didn't know anything about that, and just the whole toughness thing.
Yeah, a little less tough.
Yeah.
So I have to sidebar on that. Who's tougher with the kids?
Oh, she's a pushover with the kids. She's a pushover. Like, I'm hardcore,
So work is one way, but home is another way.
Yeah. They gotta, be corrected. Now, she is, in all fairness, with them a lot more.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true, no doubt. But, she crumbles, and my daughter especially knows your weak points. And so, like, she'll use your weak points, and so she knows that she crumbles, and so she'll use it against. She won't like me saying this, by the way, so, she's not going to like that, but I'm definitely tougher.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. Sometimes you need one person who's the little bit softer side.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, because when the one person, I find with my children as they got older, the softer person was the one who had those conversations that the kids would open up a little bit more about.
Yeah, I agree.
And one parent
will definitely talk to her more.
See,
Definitely.
one person needs to be that.
Yeah.
And it's not because they don't want to talk to me, because I was the bad cop.
Yeah.
It's just they have a lot to say.
Yeah.
And they can kind of offload it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I get the shorter version, which
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for.
Yeah.
Because I hear something, I'm like, are you still on the phone with her? But, oh, sorry. Did I say both my kids do it?
Yeah.
So now coming up, I'm not sure exactly when this will air, but you do it both. You do it every year, Faith Over Fear.
Yeah.
It used to be called Rank Makers.
Yes.
And now you call it Faith Over Fear. So tell us about, I know there was obviously there's a religious component now-ish, but what made you change the name, and how did that transition? Because you had a big brand, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to get rid of this brand and I'm going to go here, and somebody in business might go, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So from a business standpoint, how did that work out? What made you decide? And then obviously there's a personal component.
Yeah. So we had ran an annual event for 10 years. This will be year 11. And it has been different names over the years, Toppreneur Academy, Rainmakers Live. It's been a few other things. But I just felt very called of how my life had totally changed, that I wanted to come up with something around faith, still business, but something like, how do I mix faith in there? And I'm pretty sure it was my friend Tyla that actually came up with, Tyla.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure she came up with it, Faith Over Fear. I just thought that just makes a lot of sense. And so, it's interesting because, we come out of COVID in 2021, right? Am I doing that right? No, 2022, we came back in person, and we had 2019, we sold 2,200 tickets. 2022, we had 200 in the room, right? So vast downgrade. And then last year we changed the name. In 2023 we changed the name of Faith Over Fear, and we had about 1,000 people in there. Wow. And this year we expect around 3,000. And so it was awesome. Now we still taught a lot of the stuff that we have always taught, but now I just have scriptural background on it. I now know where certain concepts came from, and I bring scripture into the different things that that I teach. And so faith is kind of the foundation, and then we have 6 pillars, and God over top everything, right? And so we bring faith into every component, because for me it was an exchange, not an addition. And so faith changed every part of my life. And so it's, I bring faith into every part of my life. And so, that's what we did.
No, I think that's fascinating, because I know, first off, people have a hard time in business with change. If it's working, but it could be better, they're afraid to make that change.
Sure.
Sometimes you have to try things in business and it doesn't work. You gotta go back to what was working.
Yeah.
So for making that leap,
Yeah.
You know, I know you had a few name changes, but I remember Top Earner Academy because that's the ones I remember.
Yeah.
And then I remember Rank Makers because the COVID part,
Yeah.
you guys did an amazing job of figuring
virtuals.
out
Yeah.
how to do that.
Yeah.
The virtual events. You did 2 years, did you do virtual?
Yeah, we had in 2021, we had like 7,000 people on live in the virtual. And so
Wow.
that was pretty cool.
I just remember watching because I was on it.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
I've made either virtually most of them.
Yeah. I
Or
think so.
in person. And I'm watching this and I'm just amazed
Mm.
at the wall. And I know the people came on and they told how they did that and
Yeah.
the transition they had to make, and they had to make it quick because they do events.
Yeah.
And I was just fascinated by the fact that everybody could pivot on business.
Yeah.
And then the amount of people that showed up and that you guys were like, okay, this is what it's that perseverance that you two have, you
Yeah.
and Jess have. I got to tell you, when she was here, I told her, I said, I forget the word I used, but for you, I come up with perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, what do we need to do? We got to change something? Okay, let's change it now.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
can we change it now?
Yeah.
Can it be done by tomorrow? Can it be done? Like how are we going to do that? I mean,
Yeah.
just, you don't have a problem asking the how, I guess. I'm losing my words all of a sudden because I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
I just look at that and I say, how do you guys, like how?
Yeah.
And you just, okay, we're going to figure it out
Yeah.
every time.
That is the way.
And
we don't know if it's going to work, and there's been plenty of things that didn't. You know, there's
Yeah.
been plenty of things that we tried, and we're like, oh, no, that was a train wreck. But we're not afraid to try to change. And I've always been wired that way. As soon as I know I don't want to do this thing anymore, whether it makes sense or not, I'm out. I get out of there. I change
Right.
it, or I change me, or I move, or whatever. So we've always been willing to do that.
Well, I think in business you have to be, or you're not going to go anywhere. You're
Yeah.
going to go so far. The break points will get you.
Yeah.
You know, the 3-year, 5-year, or the financial break point will just get you
Yeah.
because life changes. It's always
Yes.
moving. It's that
Yes.
water goes down it just keeps flowing.
Yes.
So we talked about your kids. How many kids do you have now?
4. So Jess and I have 2, and then I
Right.
had 2 with my first marriage.
And how do you balance because there's an age difference
Yep.
from your first marriage to your second marriage and
Yeah.
the kids. How do you balance that as a dad you have 2 older boys
Yep.
and then 2 younger kids? How do you balance the different personalities? How do you bring it all together? Because I know there's a lot of what we call blended families out
Yeah.
there, or is an age gap. And I see some people really struggle with that.
Yeah.
The younger kids don't know how to relate to the older kids, and the parents aren't very good at the go-between. So how do you find that you balance this multi-generational parenting?
Yeah. I mean, it's different now because the boys are so old. You know, like I have a 26-year-old. Him and his fiance just moved up to Philadelphia. She's going to Villanova for her doctorate, and they're doing their thing. And then my 25-year-old. I'm typically we text back and forth all the time, but I see him about once a week. You know, he lives with his mom, and so I don't know that I have any special strategy. I mean, I think the only maybe value I can offer in this regard is when my 2 older sons were growing up, I thought my job as a dad was provider. Like that's my job, right? Provide. And so, I never had a close relationship with my dad. He was, I don't remember one time ever playing with him ever. Like I don't remember it one time ever. And so there's a lot of things that I absolutely could have done differently with the 2 older boys that I got to do differently with the 2 younger. And being more present, playing with them, goofing off, not being all about work and career. And so that's been a real blessing. And I had to have that conversation with my 2 older boys. I'm like, look, you're gonna see me be very involved with them. Right. And I'm sorry that I didn't with you guys. And I just didn't know. I was so stressed out. Trying to make it in the world and climb the corporate ladder and everything. And I'm just I work from home. I'm gonna do what I want. It's just a very different scenario than Ray's work in the corporate ladder or multiple jobs. And so they appreciated that talk. And so I would just say that if you have kids, especially dads, I think we can easily fall into I just have to work, And just know there's a lot of people that have father wounds. Like you mentioned, you've been church hurt, right? I don't know if you use that word, but
Yeah.
I believe those are the two most common things that keep you from God: father wounds and church hurt.
Raise my hand on both.
Yeah.
I didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And so how we feel about our biological father is often how we feel about our heavenly Father.
Oh.
And that's how I felt. So I thought I thought God was mean, uncaring. I'd never be enough. I'd never be good enough for him. He'd never be proud of me, because that's how I thought about my biological father. And I learned to, hey, that's not truth. That's not the truth. And so between that and church hurt, that keeps people away. And so father wounds are a big deal. There's just so many people that deal with that rejection from their father. And I prayed, help me forgive my dad. Because I thought I had, but I knew there was still stuff there. And that led, God led me to go to, the funeral of his brother. My uncle passed away a few months ago, and I go there and I moved past forgiveness to compassion. And then a few months ago, I brought my dad to Christ. And
Wow.
and so it's just, it's just a really interesting thing. But there's a lot to father wounds for sure. And so let's try to prevent them, right? By loving on your kids, being present with them, not being just the workaholic like I was, as they were growing up.
I think as parents, we kind of grow and learn.
Yeah.
We can start to see, I see things now with my kids, and they're old enough to tell me. Of course, my daughter has no problem sharing the few things that she shares
Yeah.
about, well, do you remember this? I'm like, I absolutely don't remember the one year I didn't go get school supplies with
Yeah.
you. But I'm sure I was epically failing in all areas of my life at that point. So you were not
Yeah.
alone.
Yes.
But thank you for telling me.
Yeah. Thanks for holding on to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad she feels like now she can at least share.
Yeah.
Because obviously I was probably failing epically at some parts or all parts
Yeah.
of my life. For me, not even to remember I did that.
Yeah.
Because it was something we did every year. But she was so hurt because it was something we did every
Yeah.
year. And I think it's also good when we tell our kids, like, listen, especially now that they're older, we can say, I don't even know what I was thinking at the time.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I'm normal. I'm a human.
Yeah.
I didn't have a good example, maybe. Like, I didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
So a lot of my examples of what a guy needed to be were very skewed, very skewed. And then what a parent is with a mom who had addiction issues growing up, if it wasn't for my grandparents, I don't even think I knew what a normal family would look like. So at least I had that to draw from, but
Yeah.
it was very inconsistent because it was inconsistent growing up.
Right.
So I think as parents, when we can sit there and we can say, hey, by the way, I was not perfect.
Yes.
And I made mistakes.
Yes.
What can I do now to help you with whatever you might be dealing with that I left with you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I gave that to you. How can I help you offload that from you?
Yeah.
And I find that sometimes they're like, okay, fine.
It's a great approach. Like I don't think it's a great approach to take the high horse approach, right? Like, oh, how dare you do that thing? Like, I've had many conversations with my daughter where I'm like, hey, you know what? When I was little, when I was your age, I did something very similar, and here's what I learned. And that is I learned that from a mentor of mine, and it's such a connecting moment. It's not like, how dare you do that thing? I never did anything like that. And that's just not very effective, because then it makes, well, maybe something's wrong with me. But I'm just like, you know what? I did the same kind of thing. And, this is what I learned. And I just find that that's a really good approach.
Yeah, I think that we have more techniques too as we get a
Yeah.
little bit
Yes.
older, because we learn like, wow, that child did not react at all to that thing.
Yeah.
So, well, I want to tell you, I really appreciate
Yeah.
you coming here today and
Yeah.
visiting with me
Yeah.
on the show. I think these are great tips also, business, personal,
Yeah.
spiritual, that people, very well-rounded actually. I'm so grateful for this. I think these are things that people can really get something from. I think our listeners can get something from, because if you're struggling with faith, that's okay. It just doesn't fall in your lap. Sometimes you have to work at it. Sometimes you need to navigate whatever you're struggling with in the faith realm. Sometimes it's outside pressure. And I think in business, people, change, personal change. I think these are all great topics. So I really so much. Anything else on the horizon for you coming up besides the event, the Faith Over Fear event?
Yeah, I mean, that's our big thing, Faith Over Fear. And so we do that once a year. This year it's in Orlando. And yeah, that's the big thing. And if you're struggling with your faith, just all you got to do is turn to him. The prodigal son, when the son turned to him while he was still far off, the father ran to him. So you just got to turn to him. That's all he wants. He wants a relationship. He doesn't want a list of chores that you have to do or a big to-do list. It's not about what you do. He wants a relationship with you. So just turn to him.
And there you have it.
Yeah.
There you have it. Just turn to him. So Ray, thank you so much for sharing
Yes.
from foreclosure to Faith Over Fear.
Boom.
So much appreciated.
Yeah.
You can find more about Ray. It'll be in the description, a way to contact him and the Faith Over Fear event if you want to go. And anything else to do with Ray will be in the episode description. And of course, like, subscribe, and follow. That's how we can bring on more great guests like Ray. And we will see you on the next episode of The Kristen Weardon Show with another amazing guest. Life is a journey filled with challenges, but those challenges don't have to hold you back. They can be stepping stones to something greater, a life of hope, joy, and purpose. Hi, I'm Kristen Weardon, and my passion is helping you unlock your inner potential. No matter what your past may look like, your past does not need to define your future. Whether you're recovering from a difficult relationship or trying to overcome the challenges of your backstory, I'm here to guide you every step of the way. I offer a range of services tailored to fit your unique needs. Everything from one-on-one coaching, group coaching, to foundation building challenges, and even accountability check-ins. Together, we can create a path that leads you to the future you deserve.